Imagine a timeless rural scene. In the early morning light, a group of Amish farmers and neighbors gather in a field, not with cranes, bulldozers, or high-tech gear, but with ropes, ladders, and generations of know-how. Within hours, a barn skeleton rises where there was nothing before. What would take a modern construction crew weeks, requiring teams of specialists and costly equipment, is accomplished swiftly through human cooperation and time-tested skills. This isn't some nostalgic reenactment. It's a real, living tradition that continues across Amish communities today. In this video, we explore the fascinating world of Amish construction, how it works, why it endures, and what it reveals about the values of a community that thrives outside the modern mainstream. You'll learn how centuries-old methods rival contemporary construction in speed and quality, why the Amish choose to avoid many modern tools, and how their faith and community spirit drive one of the most efficient and durable building systems in North America. To understand Amish construction, we need to go back to their origins. The Amish traced their lineage to 17th century Anabaptists in Europe, a group that faced persecution for their religious beliefs. Seeking freedom, many emigrated to North America in the early 1700s, settling primarily in Pennsylvania. These early settlers, who became known as the Pennsylvania Dutch, cleared forests and constructed simple log homes and barns. By the mid-18th century, the Amish and their neighbors had developed a unique architectural form, the bank barn. Built into a hillside, these barns allowed easy access to both upper and lower levels. A typical structure might be 60 to 120 feet long, with a stone foundation supporting massive oak beams and an overhanging upper floor called a forebay. The upper section stored hay and grain, the lower levels sheltered livestock. These barns, built with hand-hewn timbers and fitted using mortise and tenon joints secured with wooden pegs, were durable and practical. There was no rush to build fast. What mattered was that these structures stood for generations. That mindset endures in Amish craftsmanship to this day. By the 19th century, a defining Amish tradition had taken root, the barn raising. When a farmer needed a new barn, he didn't hire contractors. Instead, the entire community showed up to help. A few skilled men, often referred to as Amish engineers, would design the structure and prepare the plans. Then, over several days or weeks, materials were gathered, the foundation was prepared, and when the big day came, dozens of men assembled at dawn to raise the frame. These events, known as frolics, are part construction project, part social gathering. Foremen assign roles. One group braces beams, another cuts rafters, others hoist walls into place. Women and children support the effort by preparing food and managing logistics. By sundown, the frame often stands tall. While the entire building process may stretch over several days, the key structural work is typically completed in just one. One Amish man summed it up: "We look forward to raisings. So many help that no one has to work too hard. We get in a good visit." This blend of cooperation, efficiency, and fellowship is at the heart of Amish life, and nowhere is it more visible than in how they build. Why do the Amish stick with such old-fashioned methods in an age of power tools, prefab housing, and computer-assisted design? The answer lies in their core beliefs. The Amish follow a set of unwritten but strictly observed community guidelines called the Ordnung. These rules govern everything from clothing and transportation to farming and construction. At the core of the Ordnung is the belief in humility, simplicity, and separation from the outside world. Technology is not rejected outright, but carefully considered. The Amish fear that certain technologies, left unchecked, could promote pride, dependency, or individualism, threatening the tight-knit fabric of their communities. That's why most Amish homes lack public electricity, phones, or modern plumbing. It's not about rejecting convenience, it's about preserving values. The same philosophy applies to building. Fancy materials, loud designs, or automated tools are seen as distractions from what really matters: function, modesty, and tradition. Amish homes are typically plain, rectangular, and large enough to accommodate extended families and host rotating church services. Interiors feature light-colored walls, linoleum floors, and minimal ornamentation. Nothing is flashy, but everything is sturdy, practical, and built to last. Unlike conventional stick frame houses built with 2x4s and nails, Amish structures often use timber frame construction, a technique that dates back centuries. Thick beams are joined using mortise and tenon joints, then locked in place with hardwood pegs. These joints are incredibly strong and long-lasting. Many Amish barns still standing today were built this way 80 to 100 years ago, or even longer. This attention to detail isn't just about tradition. It's about durability. In one restoration project, An Amish team salvaged timbers from a collapsed 100-year-old barn, cleaned and repaired them, and rebuilt the original frame almost entirely from those same beams. That kind of longevity makes timber frame construction one of the most sustainable methods available, even by today's standards. It's a mistake to think of the Amish as completely anti-technology. Instead, they selectively adapt tools to meet their needs on their own terms. For instance, while Amish builders won't connect to the public power grid, many use diesel engines to power air compressors. These then drive pneumatic tools like nail guns, drills, and saws. As Popular Mechanics once reported, the Amish have figured out how to power nearly every tool in a modern workshop using compressed air. This clever workaround allows them to speed up tasks without violating their rules about electricity. In some cases, they also use hydraulic or belt-driven systems powered by diesel engines. It's a unique blend, traditional handcraft with off-grid modern tooling. On the surface, a workshop might look old-fashioned, but behind the scenes, there's a quiet hum of ingenuity that makes the work faster and more efficient without compromising beliefs. One reason Amish crews are so effective is that their workers are trained from a young age. Boys often start learning carpentry as early as 10 or 12, helping fathers and uncles on job sites. By the time they're adults, they've had years of hands-on experience. This built-in apprenticeship system results in tightly coordinated teams where each member knows their role and the roles of everyone else. Miscommunications are rare. Tasks are meticulously planned. Materials are often pre-cut and labeled days in advance. One person may pour the concrete footers, while another frames walls or lays roof panels. Because they've done it all dozens of times, the process flows like clockwork, and with no phones buzzing, radios blaring, or social media breaks, Amish crews are laser-focused. Customers consistently report that Amish workers arrive early, stay late, and follow through, often delivering more than promised. Large projects like barn raisings showcase another advantage: collective muscle. When 40 or 50 men show up to lift a timber frame by hand, the result is breathtaking. Tasks that normally require cranes or forklifts are accomplished with ropes, pulleys, and raw teamwork. One barn raising video from Wisconsin shows a 40 by 60-foot barn frame going up in just 10 hours, without a single piece of heavy machinery. Another shows synchronized groups lifting entire trusses into place using only manual winches. It's a choreographed performance where strength meets trust, each person depending on the others. Beyond speed, these events are deeply social. Meals are shared, stories told, and neighbors reconnected. The barn itself becomes a symbol of shared purpose. As one builder put it, it's not just about building a barn, it's about building community. You might think all this tradition comes at a cost, but Amish builders are often more affordable than their conventional counterparts. Why? They typically don't outsource. Most work is done in-house, by relatives or members of the same church district. There's no money spent on marketing, insurance, or expensive equipment rentals. Because of this, Amish contractors frequently underbid their competitors. What they lack in automation, they make up for in preparation, manpower, and integrity. As one homeowner put it, they showed up every day, no matter the weather, and did exactly what they said they would. The craftsmanship was beautiful. Across the Midwest and Northeast, the results of Amish construction are everywhere. Whether it's a towering bank barn from the 1800s or a freshly built timber frame home, the same principles apply: function, durability, and community-driven effort. One recent example is the Illinois Amish Heritage Center, which relocated and rebuilt a Pennsylvania-style barn originally constructed in 1879. Amish crews carefully transported and reassembled the massive structure, preserving its historic character while giving it a new life. Another story tells of a family in Indiana who hired an Amish team to restore a crumbling 1860s barn using salvaged beams and traditional joinery. These are not just buildings. They're testaments to a way of life that values cooperation over competition, tradition over trend, and lasting quality over fleeting convenience. In an age of automation and mass production, the Amish offer a compelling reminder. Sometimes, the best way forward is to hold fast to what works and to do it together. Amish barn raisings are a centuries-old rural tradition in North America, especially among Amish and Old Order Mennonite communities. In the 18th to 19th centuries, farmers needed very large wooden barns for hay, feed, and livestock. These barns were expensive and labor-intensive to build, so neighbors came together to help each other build one barn in a single effort. Today, Amish communities preserve this practice as a form of mutual aid or frolic, emphasizing community, faith, and shared work. In Amish life, barn raising strengthens social bonds and ensure that any family with a burning barn or big need can quickly get help from their neighbors. A barn raising is literally a community construction event, In rural 18th to 19th century North America, most farming families needed large barns, but could not build them alone. By enlisting unpaid labor from neighbors and relatives, each community ensured its farmers' barns would be built quickly. The custom was widespread on the American frontier and rural Canada, and it survives today mostly in close-knit Amish/Mennonite communities. Amish culture places a very high value on community and mutual aid. Amish religious teaching encourages helping others without seeking payment, trusting that the favor will be repaid in kind later. Barn raisings are examples of frolics, which are volunteer work gatherings that conclude with food and fellowship. The family hosting the barn raising typically retains ownership of the barn, but the whole community shares the work and the celebration. Because Amish groups traditionally avoid most modern technology, they rely on skilled craftsmanship and simple machines. Barns are built using heavy timber frames with traditional joinery, mortise and tenon joints secured by wooden pegs rather than nails. This method reflects both the old-fashioned building style and the Amish emphasis on manual skills. It also means each piece must fit precisely, which in turn requires careful advanced preparation. A successful one-day barn raising begins weeks or months in advance. Community leaders and the barn owner form a committee or designate experienced carpenters, barn builders, to plan every detail. Before the raising day, volunteers clear the ground, level the site, and build the foundation or cellar for the barn. The foundation is often made of poured concrete or stone and may be built a day or longer before the main event. A solid subfloor is sometimes installed on the foundation, so workers have a stable floor to stand on when assembling the frame. The family who will own the barn obtains all lumber, hardware, and materials ahead of time. Timber for the frame is usually harvested and hewn in advance, often in winter. In many Amish communities, local sawmills, often Amish-owned, produce the required beams, boards, and shingles quickly in one documented case. 12 separate sawmills work to supply the lumber for a single large barn within days. By the raising day, all posts, beams, rafters, and braces should be cut to size, with joinery, mortises, and tenons already cut into the timber. Experienced carpenters often pre-assemble each bent, a cross-section of the barn's frame, on the ground. They lay out the vertical posts and horizontal beams on flat sills, then cut and fit the mortise and tenon joints so everything interlocks precisely. Each joint is test-fitted and temporarily pegged. Rod axes, adzes, and handsaws are used to square the timber and cut channels, while chisels and augers create the mortises and tenons. Wooden pegs, often oak dowels, are prepared to hold the joints tightly once raised. The result is that on the raising day, each bent is ready to stand up and be locked together. Planning also involves mobilizing manpower. All able-bodied men in the community are expected to participate, unpaid. It is considered a civic duty. Failure to attend without good reason can lead to social censure. Leaders assign tasks based on experience. A few master builders will coordinate carpentry and major lifting operations. Other men will handle heavy lifting and bracing. Teenage boys will fetch tools, and the youngest children will observe and help in small ways. Women organize meals and refreshments. In short, every person in the community has a planned role before sunrise on the big day. On the morning of the barn raising, families arrive in horse-drawn buggies or wagons as early as dawn. A prayer or church reading often opens the day's work, reflecting the religious nature of the event. After that, the community goes to work. Experienced older men, often those who have led many raisings before, act as crew chiefs. They guide the construction sequence and make sure every task is done safely. Younger men follow their instructions on tasks like raising posts or driving pegs. Because most Amish men learn farming and carpentry from childhood, many are skilled carpenters, and the work is done by hand with practiced efficiency. Meanwhile, women and children play supportive roles. Women set up large kitchens and tend to cooking all day. At mealtimes, they serve hearty hot lunches, often a communal feast around 11 a.m., and sometimes supper. Children stay safely out of the way. Some entertain each other. Others fetch extra tools or materials. As one observer noted of an Amish barn raising film, if you were watching all day, you may or may not have been able to tell who was in charge, because everyone seamlessly cooperates. By mid-afternoon, when the heavy work is mostly done, the community often gathers to eat and visit. The structural system for an Amish barn is almost always a timber frame of squared beams, posts and lintels, joined with mortise and tenon joinery. Every major intersection of posts and beams is a precisely cut mortise, slot, and tenon, tongue joint. Once fitted, these joints are pinned with one or more wooden pegs, dowels, which expand to lock the timbers together. No nails or metal connectors are used in the main frame. This method produces a rigid, durable structure by purely mechanical fitting. Traditionally, all cutting and fitting are done with hand tools, broadaxes and adzes for squaring logs, framing saws and pit saws for cutting, chisels and mallets for joints, and simple braces for drilling peg holes. Historically, even axe-driven pit saws were used by teams in most old-order Amish communities. Even today, the job is done with hand and animal-powered tools. Some communities allow a few gasoline-powered tools, portable sawmill or drills powered by tractor, or battery tools charged by generator, to speed the work. But in many districts, the principles remain the same. As one source notes, depending on the community, you might find only hand tools, but more and more it is not uncommon to find power tools or hybrid tools in use. Raising heavy timbers requires mechanical advantage. Even if no electricity is involved, Amish crews often use simple rigs like a gin pole, a tall leaning pole, and a block and tackle pulley system for each bent frame wall. A crew may set up a sturdy pole fixed in the ground next to the post, attach a pulley at the top, and run ropes from the bent through the pulley to a winch or people pulling on the ground. By hauling on the rope or a hand crank come along, a small group can slowly lever a multi-ton beam upright. In one described effort, after initial attempts failed, builders drove a gin pole into the soil and used a triple block and tackle to lift each heavy post into position. When ropes slip or parts break, they replace them. But ultimately, this system means only 2 or 3 men must pull to lift a beam that would be impossible to push by sheer muscle alone. Once a bent is near vertical, a large wooden mallet, sometimes called a persuader, is used to drive the bottom tenons fully into their sill mortises. After each bent is raised, carpenters immediately check it for plumb, vertical alignment, and level. They install temporary braces, diagonal wooden struts, to hold it true. In practice, men may use squares, plumb bobs, or the 3-4-5 triangle rule to check that corners are right angles. By the time all bents are up, the frame is stiffened by multiple crossskirts and purlins that tie the bents together, as well as by the partially completed roof structure. Building the barn on the big day follows a step-by-step sequence, generally along these lines. Early morning, any remaining site tasks are finished. The foundation and sill plates, horizontal timbers on top of the foundation, should already be in place. Workers sweep debris so the frame can be assembled. On the floor of the barn, carpenters assemble one bent flat on the ground. A bent is a single cross-sectional frame, 2 vertical posts connected by 2 or more horizontal beams. They square and level it on the sills, then temporarily peg the joints. Using poles, ropes, and muscle power, the crew lifts the bent into a vertical position. Men on one side may push while others pull on ropes or operate a come-along. They lock the bottom tenons into the sill mortises and insert cross-bridging to stabilize it. The process is repeated along the length of the barn. After one bent is braced, workers assemble the next bent on the ground and raise it. As each bent is raised, the frame begins to take shape. Once adjacent bents are upright, carpenters slide or lower the girts, horizontal beams between posts, and purlins, beams connecting the tops of the bents, into place. These timbers may be set on brackets or notches and then pegged. This ties the bents together into a rigid structure. Often a team will lift a long purlin by hand with the help of temporary levers or ladders. At various stages, crews add diagonal braces to prevent the frame from racking. They frequently check that corners remain square and posts remain vertical, making minor shifts if needed. With the wall frame up, attention turns to the roof. In many Amish raisings, the rafters or roof trusses have been pre-cut and partially assembled the day before. Small teams carry the rafters up ladders or climbing the frame to set the lower ends. For very large farms, some communities now use a crane or tractor to lift pre-built trusses. Older Amish methods involve gin poles and ropes or pike poles to lift rafters one by one. Workers nail or peg the rafters to the ridge beam and purlins as they go. Once the last rafter or truss is in place, a traditional topping out ceremony may occur. An evergreen bough or small wreath is placed at the peak of the roof, symbolizing thanks and good luck. Historically, the master carpenter might give a toast or short speech at this point, though Amish services are modest and may simply be a quiet moment of thanks. By early afternoon, the main frame is standing. Carpentry leaders inspect and tighten any loose pegs and add any remaining braces. The structure is now stable but open. At this point, many helpers depart. Lunch is often served around 11 a.m., and by early afternoon, most of the heavy lifting is done. After the raising day, the host family, with smaller volunteer crews, completes the barn's exterior. They nail sheathing boards, shingles, or metal roofing, and siding over the frame. Floors, doors, and interior partitions are also added in the days or weeks afterward. Often, the barn becomes fully operational before winter. Throughout this sequence, teamwork is crucial. As one documentarian noted, it's pretty amazing how the whole process is coordinated. Thousands of person-hours of work are compressed into one intense day. By coordinating who lifts, who steadies, and who pegs, the Amish can reliably raise an entire barn frame, even 3 to 4-story barns, in a single daylight period. Key tools and equipment used in Amish barn raising include framing saws, crosscut saws, broad axes, and adzes are used to cut and trim large timbers. Many Amish farmsteads still have teams of men who fell and square logs into beams using axes and hand saws in winter. Heavy timber framing chisels, often driven by wooden mauls, cut precise mortises and tenons. After raising, wooden mallets or sledgehammers, sometimes called persuaders, finish locking pegs into place. Hand-operated brace and bit tools drill holes for the wooden pegs. In some districts, gear-driven augers, powered by battery or tractor, may be used sparingly, but many frames still rely on manual drilling. Simple wooden framing squares and plumb bobs help carpenters keep bents level and posts vertical during assembly. Measuring rods or the 3, 4, 5 triangle ensure accurate right angles. Thick hemp or synthetic ropes are threaded through block and tackle pulley systems attached to gin poles. In 19th century barn raisings, pulleys salvaged from wagons and hand-wound capstans were common. Today, some Amish may use small gasoline engine winches or come-along lever winches for heavy lifts. The host farm often provides space, a cleared field or the new foundation, and any horses or wagons needed. After the frame is up, local teams use ladders and scaffolding, often constructed from spare boards, to finish the roof. Despite the lack of high tech, the Amish effectively use simple machines and their own muscle power. A historian of timber framing notes that such barn raisings resemble Talkit in Finland or other communal builds. They typically use lots of manpower and mechanical advantage, pulleys, levers, rather than motorized cranes. Safety on an Amish barn raising relies on experience, communication, and mutual care rather than formal regulations. There are no modern hard hats or safety rails, but people take precautions in other ways. The crew chiefs continuously communicate. For example, when one team is lifting a post, others stand by to catch or guide it. At least one observer noted that the event was so well organized, you may or may not have been able to tell who was in charge, implying a flat hierarchy, but clear signals. With heavy beams, men lift slowly and deliberately, pausing if any shifting is felt. One report from a barn reconstruction described men pulling the rope with all our might, slowly and carefully raising a beam using block and tackle. As soon as each bend is nearly vertical, helpers prop it with braces. This prevents collapses. Builders then use levels and squares to plumb the posts, and only move on once the frame is stable. Workers keep their heads up and hands clear when beams swing. Younger helpers, boys, often stand by ready to warn if something is off balance. Women keep children at a distance and handle tools and food safely away from the lifting areas. While accidents do occur, they are quite rare in barn raisings. In one detailed account, the most common accidents when they happen are minor falls or being struck by a dropped hammer. The risk is mitigated by the fact that all participants are familiar with the tasks and look out for each other. Overall, safety is built into the process. After raising, the community may hold a quick prayer or a word of thanks. Then everyone knows the main work is done for the day. By dusk, the structure is solid enough that the host can start covering the walls and roof in the following days without danger of collapse. When the main frame is up, most of the community's work is finished. The time-lapse of a typical raising shows the barn frame, ready to go, fully operational by day's end. In practice, often the roof sheathing, boards or trusses, and siding are completed in the next few days by a smaller crew of family and neighbors. Because the frame is usually square and braced, these tasks are easier. If the barn is very large, some sections of wall or loft floor may be finished later. Stalls, loft floors, and other interior features, like a built-in silo or feeding lofts, are generally completed by the owner after the raising. These tasks do not require the whole community's help and can be done at a more relaxed pace. Traditionally, the barn raising ends with a communal meal or dance. Amish gatherings, like frolics or quilting bees, often include festive food. Today, especially in stricter communities, the celebration may be simple: hearty food and fellowship during and after the raising. The day's shared effort typically reinforces community unity, which is one major goal of the event. Finally, the expectation is that the favor will be returned. Families in Amish communities keep track of how many barn raisings each has helped with, creating a mutual credit system. If a family needs help in future, the community knows they have paid into the system by past participation. Barn raising is thus both a practical construction technique and a social institution. In the words of one observer, it remains one of the Amish community's most important events, preserving values of aid and cooperation in a modern world.